When you think of legends in animation, the groundbreaking aesthetic of Studio Ghibli likely tops the list. Under Hayao Miyazaki's direction, Studio Ghibli movies have constantly redefined what it means to create a delicately immersive animated world thanks to hand-drawn, detail-oriented artistry and universally relatable stories centering on our relationships with each other and the environment. Whether you're in the mood for the magically whimsical, the strange, the heartfelt, or the flat-out, gut-wrenchingly tragic, Studio Ghibli's got you covered with some of the best animated movies of all time. IGN staff put their heads together to nail down the studio's 10 best movies to date, and because it wasn't hard enough to pick just 10 of them, we did our best to rank them. So without further ado, here are IGN's top 10 best Studio Ghibli movies of all time so far. Ponyo follows the story of a goldfish princess who desperately wants to live in the surface world and the 5-year-old boy she befriends after developing a taste for ham and human blood.
It licked me! It's alive!
Though there are heavy Little Mermaid influences, Ponyo is wholly unique thanks to Miyazaki's vibrant hand-drawn animation style. And while its artistry can be appreciated by all ages, Ponyo was made specifically with a younger audience in mind. Its themes about ocean pollution and preservation might go over the heads of some, but its preschool protagonists and unrestrained imagination make it a great introduction to Studio Ghibli for little kids. And I wasn't kidding about the taste for blood, but I promise it's not scary or gross or violent. The only downside to showing this movie to children is they're probably going to insist on listening to the ending theme on repeat. And in their defense, it is kind of a bop. One of the most prevalent themes in Miyazaki's films is a love of all things that fly, and that includes pigs. Porco Rosso follows an Italian World War I ex-fighter ace named Marco Pago, or Rossellini in the American version, who's been transformed by a curse into an anthropomorphic pig. Amazingly, that's not really a central plot point. The film is more concerned with Marco's career as the legendary airborne bounty hunter Porco Rosso, Italian for Crimson Pig, as he wages war on sky pirates during a fascist regime and navigates some complex personal relationships. Offering up some breathtaking animation, Miyazaki blends fact and fantasy into a comedic, high-flying adventure. There are gritty themes just below the surface, making Porco Rosso a masterful bit of bittersweet storytelling about identity and star-crossed lovers. It was originally intended as a 40-minute short to air on Japan Airlines, and the plan was to, quote, make a movie which tired businessmen on international flights could enjoy even with their minds dulled due to lack of oxygen. But Miyazaki got carried away and went whole hog on the project, turning it into a full feature film instead. As a result, we got one of Studio Ghibli's most underrated movies and also one of the best lines in anime history.
Thanks for the offer, but I'd rather be a pig than a fascist.
Released internationally as The Boy and the Heron, Miyazaki's most recent entry on this list is based on the 1934 novel by Yoshino Genzaburo, How Do You Live? Set in Japan during World War II, many plot elements parallel Miyazaki's own life before it veers in a fantastic supernatural direction, as the director's been known to do. A young boy, Mahito, is still grieving the death of his mother when his father brings him and his pregnant stepmother to the countryside. From there, a gray heron lures Mahito into a mystical realm where he must confront his grief, mortality itself, and a whole shitload of birds. While The Boy and the Heron was initially touted as Miyazaki's final film with Studio Ghibli, that remains to be seen, and it seems like we're probably gonna see birds talk before we actually see the guy retire. I mean, there are actually talking birds, they're parrots, but you know what I'm saying. Not directed by Hayao Miyazaki, but still one of Studio Ghibli's finest, Grave of the Fireflies adapts Akiyuki Nosaka's semi-autobiographical short story of the same name into a profoundly moving anti-war film that reduces most viewers with a beating heart in their body into a disgusting, snotty, sobbing mess. Telling the story of two children's struggle to survive in a harsh wasteland after Japan's surrender in World War II, it's a story of innocence, loss, devastation, and hope. The unique mix of animation techniques the studio employs creates an achingly realistic portrayal of these somber themes that remains accessible for the whole family, though not exactly fun for the whole family. Isao Takahata's masterpiece is a startlingly beautiful and eye-opening meditation on the human cost of war, and in case I did not make it abundantly clear, it is very sad. If you don't like it when water comes out of your eyes and you feel feelings, avoid it at all costs. If movies about anti-fascist pigs, avian grief counselors, or gut-wrenching post-war tragedy are a little too heavy, how about a movie where a witch delivers birthday presents and baked goods with her talking cat friend? Kiki's delivery service follows a young witch in training and her snarky pal Gigi in a tale based on another children's book of the same name. Despite its inherently supernatural trappings, Kiki's delivery service stays relatively grounded as it soars through Studio Ghibli's trademark cerulean blue skies, and Miyazaki effortlessly weaves together the magical and the mundane to craft a timeless coming-of-age story. Another safe bet for younger viewers, it's also the kind of light and breezy movie that's great to throw on while you're sick in bed with a cold or nursing a nasty hangover.
Could we get out of the rain, please? I'm begging you!
Another Miyazaki adaptation of a beloved book that's become more renowned as a Ghibli film, Howl's Moving Castle follows a young milliner, that's a hat maker, named Sophie, who befriends a wizard living in a magical castle. Now get this, the castle moves. When a jealous witch curses Sophie with old age, the wizard, Howl, must use all his magical abilities to save her before time runs out. Howl's Moving Castle is a masterful display of Miyazaki's animation skills and ability to pace and interpret characters for dynamic storytelling. As the latter half of the film takes a darker turn, it becomes clear that Howl's Moving Castle is another of Hayao Miyazaki's contributions to Studio Ghibli's anti-war portfolio. It's probably worth noting that any fans of the film who are curious about the book, or vice versa, be forewarned that Miyazaki definitely took some major creative license with the source material.
I feel terrible, like there's a weight on my chest.
A heart's a heavy burden.
Written, directed, and based on a manga epic by Hayao Miyazaki, Nausicaa and The Valley of the Wind is set in a post-apocalypse a millennium after the collapse of human civilization. It follows titular heroine Nasco as she attempts to save her community from an ecological disaster. Nausicaa and The Valley of the Wind is a timeless example of Miyazaki's masterful world building, and it's one of the best science fiction movies, period. Technically released before Studio Ghibli existed, it was thanks to Nasco's success that the animation house got founded, so I have it to thank for every other entry on this list. Nasco's influence and importance can't be understated. Though Nasco was heavily inspired by the works of French comics artist Jean Giraud, aka Mobius, the admiration was mutual, and Mobius actually would go on to name his daughter Nasco out of respect for Miyazaki's work. Meanwhile, a young animator named Hideaki Anno cut his teeth working on Nasco under Miyazaki and would go on to create Neon Genesis Evangelion, which explores some similar themes and shares some visual DNA with Ghibli's epic. And of course, anyone familiar with Star Wars The Force Awakens will likely have a sense of déjà vu watching Nasco the first time, as J.J. Abrams clearly took a bit of inspiration. Sharing many similar themes with Nasco but taking place in the ancient past instead of the distant future, Princess Mononoke is the film that made Western audiences sit up straight and pay close attention to Studio Ghibli. Telling the epic story of a forest princess who mobilizes to combat mechanization and encroachment that threatens her people and their home, Mononoke showcases Miyazaki's usual pedigree of hand-drawn animation, but it also proved the studio wasn't opposed to trying new things. It was the first Ghibli film to utilize CGI extremely sparingly, and it did so to great effect. Any fans of the most recent games in the Legend of Zelda series who haven't seen Princess Mononoke or revisited it since playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I would highly recommend doing so, as Nintendo's open world epics borrow heavily from this one, though they also sample from various other corners of the Studio Ghibli catalog, from fancy hat shops to ancient machines, floating castles to forest spirits.
I hate all of you humans!
Yes, I'm human, son. And so are you.
Stop it! I'm a wolf, you hear?
Son.
Stay back!
Speaking of forest spirits, we couldn't leave out Studio Ghibli's literal mascot, the eponymous mystical woodland critter of My Neighbor Totoro. The studio's second feature film is centered on two young girls who befriend magical arboreal creatures after moving to a new home in the countryside. One of the most fascinating elements of Miyazaki's work is his ability to tell compelling stories without a clear-cut villain or conventional antagonist. Nowhere is that more readily apparent than in My Neighbor Totoro, which is almost entirely devoid of conflict altogether. The closest thing it has to a bad guy is a goat that tries to steal an ear of corn, or tuberculosis as an abstract concept that isn't ever actually mentioned in the film. But still, Totoro manages to entertain through a mix of slice of life and magical realism against some of Miyazaki's most beautiful landscapes ever.
Totoro? Is that what your name is? Totoro?
Oh, and if you've ever wondered where the name Totoro comes from, the Japanese word for troll is tororo, and Totoro is a childlike mispronunciation of that. So kind of like when a little kid says Pischetti instead of spaghetti. And hey, while we're at it, Studio Ghibli's name is taken from the Libyan Arabic word for a hot desert wind, Ghibli, which became the nickname for the Caproni CA-309 Ghibli, an Italian reconnaissance plane used during World War II. The studio chose the name because they planned to blow a new wind through the anime industry, but Miyazaki's affinity for airplanes might have also been a factor there as well. In any case, though the air current and the aircraft are both pronounced with a hard consonant sound, Miyazaki himself says Ghibli, so it's sort of like a GIF situation, and honestly, you can pronounce it either way you want, people are probably going to figure out what you're trying to say. Probably not a huge surprise, but our pick for the best Studio Ghibli film ever is Spirited Away. It's an enchanting tale of magic, mystery, and monsters, and a meditation on how the spirit world intersects with the mundane. Spirited Away centers on ordinary 10-year-old Chihiro from our world who inadvertently ends up trapped in the spirit realm, working at a bathhouse resort for monsters. Chihiro must learn to navigate her strange surroundings and ultimately get back home. Along the way, Chihiro faces her fears countless times over, which aside from the breathtaking visuals is one of Spirited Away's most memorable qualities. Throughout the film, Chihiro encounters a menagerie of terrifying creatures, but some of the most effective scenes in the movie are rooted in universal childhood fears, like getting lost, being separated from your parents, having to talk to strangers, and getting in trouble, as well as exaggerated depictions of childhood aversions, like having the bathtub overflowing, or having to walk down a rickety flight of stairs into the basement. But even at face value, Spirited Away is just a brilliant modern fairy tale that showcases everything that makes Studio Ghibli so respected. If you're only gonna watch one of the movies on this list, make it that one. And there you have it, the IGN staff's picks for Studio Ghibli's top 10 movies of all time so far, as of us making this video. Hopefully they make more in the future. Your personal ranking may vary, so share your faves in the comments below. Personally, I would have made room for Poco, but I realized that raccoon dogs who use their magical testicles to shapeshift aren't for everybody. On that note, thanks for watching, we'll see you around.